welcome back to my channel. I'm super excited to have you back. And today, as promised last week, we're going to go into what the point of intermittent fasting is. So we're going to talk about the last E for effectiveness. So in my previous video, we talked about how intermittent fasting is easy to start. We talked about the evidence behind it, like is there actual research? What is it about? And now we're going to talk about what is it effective for, because I think that's really what a lot of people actually care about. I'll also talk about why I did it personally in terms of all the different research and the way it affects our organs. Let's start off by talking about how intermittent fasting actually affects your organs in different ways. So I'm hoping today to start from the top, which is the brain, and work my way down so that by the end, you guys feel like you have an idea of each organ system and how it's really changing positively with intermittent fasting. So when you think about eating, we chatted a bit about this last week, but when you eat something, you can think about having, let's say, a bag of chips or cookies, my favorite. So there are a lot of carbohydrates in there, which is another way to say glucose. So when you think about it, a calorie, let's say a cookie is like 200 calories, versus you could have a bunch of nuts, which is, let's say, 200 calories for 5 or 6. In my mind, you could think, okay, well, 1 calorie, if you eat 3,500 calories, that's 1 pound. But you guys know that 1 calorie from chips versus 1 calorie from nuts is not the same thing. Although they both provide energy, the source of the energy is super important. It's the same thing with intermittent fasting. When you have energy in your body, it's basically used from 3 different places. You can use carbohydrates or glucose, which is also known as sugar. I just realized there's a lot of ways to say the word sugar. You can use fat, which is the primary source when you're intermittent fasting. You could also use protein. So that's broken down via like muscles, which is a place where a lot of your protein is. So those are kind of the major sources that you can get energy from. When you think about it, getting the source of energy actually really matters in terms of the positive effects. So when you use sugar as your primary source of energy, your body responds by saying, oh, I'm gonna release this hormone, insulin. Insulin is a super important hormone that we're gonna keep bringing up throughout this talk. So that's why I wanted to emphasize. So insulin responds to high glucose. Insulin goes into your body and it's like, okay, I need to store all of this glucose or sugar into my body. And insulin binds to insulin receptors. Makes sense? Insulin binds to a receptor. Now, when you think about people who have type 2 diabetes, you'll hear the word insulin resistance a lot, or their insulin's not working. The reason is, if you think about it, your insulin is basically there to take that sugar and store it. But if you constantly have a ton of sugar, they're kind of like pooped out. They're like, oh my God, insulin, I'm tired of recepting you. I can't take any more of it. And then they become resistant. Oh, no. And then what happens is, as you can think of, you basically your insulin's like, hello, why aren't you binding to me? And then more insulin goes higher and higher and higher. And eventually your receptors are like, you know what? Forget it. I'm not working anymore. Oh, no. And that's how ultimately you can get type 2 diabetes. So what's amazing about intermittent fasting is that insulin level, that hormone, actually goes down. Why is that important? So important on different levels. So number 1, weight loss. I know everyone's like, oh my gosh, especially post-quarantine, I gotta lose some weight. So intermittent fasting is a lifestyle that can help you with that. Because what happens is, when you're intermittent fasting, your body doesn't have this constant source of sugar. So it's like, where am I gonna get some energy? Boom, fat. Ta-da! So then that's a way to lose weight, right? Because you're basically getting the fat that is stored in different parts of your body being used as an energy source. And then what ends up happening is, of course, you lose fat in your body. So that's one way that you lose weight, by intermittent fasting. Another way that people have to think about is caloric intake. So I definitely mentioned that 3,500 calories equals about 1 pound. Now, when you're only eating for a small period of time, for 8 hours a day, inevitably, although even if I try, I end up consuming less calories. And so there have been studies that show people who intermittent fast their caloric intake reduces naturally because you're more comfortable with that state of being a bit hungry, so that you're not constantly filling yourself up with food, and you only have a certain window of time that you can eat. So by reducing that time window, you inevitably will reduce the amount of calories that you take in. So boom, reason number 2 that there's weight loss. So those are kind of the major ways that you have weight loss. But there's also this myth, which is crazy, because people say, oh, you know what? If you don't eat multiple times a day, then your metabolism slows down. Complete myth. Dr. Oz talked about it, if you want to leave me for another doctor. But there's also research that shows by shifting into intermittent fasting, the way that your body processes things is different. And it actually shows that your metabolism is more flexible and actually can increase. So don't believe that older school method that you have to eat like every half an hour, which I technically used to, I have to say, because I was always hangry, but it's not true. By not eating for a period of time, your metabolism does not slow down. So those are the 3 ways, boom. 1, through actively reducing the amount of sugar and using fat. Number 2, by reducing the amount of calories that you take in a day. And number 3, by actually shifting the way your metabolism works to be more efficient and more effective. So those are 3 ways that I just wanted to chat about the weight loss, which I know is one of individuals like a person's motivation to intermittent fast. All right, now to the stuff that I actually started intermittent fasting for, the brain. So when you think about exercise, right? So let's say we're gonna exercise my bicep here, which is a little teeny tiny bicep, but you know, when you think about it, you have to train your bicep to get bigger, right? And how do you do that? You lift weights, you stress it out, you do push-ups. I'm still on my knees, but eventually I'll hopefully get to a full push-up. But you stress it out, right? Your brain is the same way. If it constantly has a source of sugar, which is its source of energy, it's never in a state of stress. People are always like, oh, why would you want to stress your brain out? It's to make it stronger, the same way we do with our muscles, right? So what's been shown is in our brain, if our brain is stressed, and in this sense, obviously you're not lifting weights with your brain, that's a weird visual, but the way you stress it out is by reducing caloric intake and having that intermittent fast period where you're not eating at all. And what happens is, as I mentioned, your brain will say, boom, I'm gonna use a different source of energy, which is fat. And what they've shown is by using fat as a source of energy and our beloved ketones, you actually get production of different hormones in the brain and different growth factors that literally causes synapses in your brain, which is the connections in your brain, to be stronger. They've even shown that you get what we say neurogenesis. Neurogenesis means brain growth. You actually get new neurons, strong neurons, just like when you stress out your muscle and you break down that muscle and now you get stronger muscles by doing push-ups. Same concept for your brain. And that is what convinced me, because I have a family history of Alzheimer's disease. Might be TMI, but I really am nervous about brain health. And when I did my master's in neuroscience, this is when I started seeing all these talks about how intermittent fasting can help prevent dementia. And that's why I started 5-10 years ago, before it was cool, because I really wanted to say, you know, when I'm 60 or 70 or 80 years old, I did something actively that can hopefully either prevent Alzheimer's disease or even maybe push it so that I don't get it until I'm a lot older. So that is such an important factor. They've even shown this in animal studies where mice perform better in terms of mazes. They have better spatial recognition, they have better memories. So this is a huge aspect, and I know, you know, physical appearance and physical strength is important to a lot of individuals, but your mind is forever. And I think I don't want to underemphasize this, that it's super important to have good brain health and good mental health. So that is one of the huge reasons I intermittent fast. And I hope that that's helping convince you as well. So we did the brain. Now let's move on to the face. You're like, Amira, how does intermittent fasting help my face? Because of anti-aging. And so what's amazing about intermittent fasting is on a cellular level, you actually cause your cells to have kind of like antioxidant behavior. A lot of people are like, what does that mean? If you think about the sun, why do we stop the sun from hitting our face? Because people say sun damage equals aging, which is true. It's because what happens is you get these free radicals. You could think of them as like kind of unstable parts of our skin or DNA. And that's why eating things like different fruits like berries that have antioxidants is awesome. Now, what's super great about intermittent fasting is that it causes antioxidants to happen inside of you. So by having less oxidative species, we call it, or kind of unstable DNA, you actually have DNA repair, and you actually have antioxidant properties on a cellular level. So hence, you should still wear sunblock and avoid the sun if you can, but let's just say you do have some, and everybody does, some DNA damage. Your body in an intermittent fasted state will actually shift to have DNA repair. And on top of that, it gets rid of the crappy cells. This is a fancy way of saying it's called autophagy. I'm probably pronouncing this wrong, but ultimately, what that means is getting rid of the old cells, the cells that are damaged, that are like meh, and it's like, let's create new cells, let's create amazing cells, and then hopefully you stay young and fresh for a longer period of time. But it's really great because antioxidants are always known to be good for you, and this is a natural and free way to create that, right? Anti-aging free, what? Is that even possible? It is. So now we've talked about the weight loss, we've talked about the brain, we've talked about the beauty, and the next part is inside, which is the heart. Now, cardiac disease, type 2 diabetes, high cholesterol, this is something that affects many Americans, North America in general, and I'm sure other parts of the world as well. What's amazing about intermittent fasting is there's a lot of research on this, but it actually reduces the amount of atherosclerosis. I know that's a mouthful, but what that basically means is you have arteries that run through your body, around your heart. It gets clogged up by basically having caked, you can think of it as like a layer of dirty piping because of having bad food or different types of high cholesterol sources. And what happens is when those pipes get smaller and smaller and smaller, eventually, boom, you could have a heart attack, right? Because your heart is not getting the blood because the pipe is clogged. Now, intermittent fasting has shown to reduce the clogging. It's like basically like Drano. I mean, that's a little excessive, but you could think of it like that. Drano for the arteries. I feel like I should get a sponsor from Drano right now. But anyway, it definitely helps with that. So hence that prevents or reduces the chance of having a heart attack or myocardial infarction, if you want to be fancy. And then on top of that, it reduces your levels of cholesterol. So, I mean, in general, that's amazing for your heart and long term. And if you think about it, people who have diabetes, I talked about this earlier, and insulin resistance because they have too much insulin, because they have too much sugar in their body. They've shown if you're pre-diabetic and you intermittent fast, no medications, you can actually prevent yourself from getting diabetes. Hello? Why wouldn't we all do this? I mean, oh my God, I'm like way too excited about it, but I really want to empower everybody to have a great, health and empower themselves to take control of their body. So we've talked about the face, the brain, the heart, the arteries. You're like, what's left? Well, it's a thing that we all think about. We all have, I'm sure, have someone in our family affected by it, cancer. Now, we talked about how your body can get rid of damaged cells, improves DNA repair. So they've actually shown in animal studies, mice that have what we call multiple tumors because they've been manipulated in some way, shape, or form to have that. If they have periods of intermittent fasting, you can actually have reduction in the size of tumors. They've done studies in patients who have prostate cancer as well, and these are still ongoing, but there definitely seems to be a positive effect in the sense that it's either preventing or having patients respond better to treatments while they already have cancer through intermittent fasting. And a lot of these studies are actually still pending, but I mean, I'm like literally watching like a hawk because the moment they come out, I'll definitely make another video for you guys to say this is what the new research shows. So, that's this thing, being a medical doctor for me, cancer's been a big fear. I see, unfortunately, many people affected by that. And if there's something I can do in my diet to help with maybe preventing, maybe having me have a better outcome, better response, it's something I'm going to try to do. And so I really hope that if it wasn't for all the other millions of things I've already talked about, cancer, the big C, if intermittent fasting can help with that, I really think it's worth a try for everybody, and you know, that would definitely even reduce the healthcare burden in general. I really hope that this talk has, you know, allowed you to have an overview of what intermittent fasting can do for you. If it's, I mean, it can be for all of those reasons or one of those reasons, whatever resonates with you. But I think that, you know, doing your own research as well is super important, and go out there, look at it, go to watch some of these TED Talks or other publications that are out there. Talk to your healthcare provider, your dietitian about it, and see if it's right for you. I did mention this in my previous video. There are some medical conditions that, you know, wouldn't allow you to intermittent fast, so make sure you check with your healthcare provider and make sure it's the right decision for you. But I think it's something to consider trying, and you know, watch my other video to see how to get started if this is something you think is right. Thank you so much. I really am looking forward to answering comments and questions that you have. Please feel free to do that below, and then I can answer them on other videos if you have any questions. Thank you so much. Subscribe if you want to see more.